Dear Mr. President, my name is Leland B. Saturn, and my address 2019 South 7th Street, Minneapolis, Minnesota. By reason of my personal religious conviction, I am a conscientious objector to any and all forms of war and to all preparations pertaining thereto. This conviction doesn't stem from a starry-eyed idealism, not from the assumption that man is inherently good, not from the so-called oversimplification of the problem of evil, not from motives of appeasement, not from a will to national isolationism, not from thinking which refuses to face facts of evil which are inimical to the best in our American way of life. My conviction is rooted in the knowledge that there is a very practical higher way of living and dealing with men, individually and collectively. It works ultimately whether the other side is willing to adopt the same approach or not. It begins at the revelation of the character of God found in Christ. For me, the life and teachings of Jesus supply my only standard for faith and action, and it is my conviction that his way cannot be reconciled with the way of war, whether offensive or defensive. One is the negation of the other. I believe that war is the greatest crime which can be committed against humanity, a method of dealing with the problem of international evil in which nothing is gained and all is lost. War settles only the question of military might. The wrongs which it purports to alleviate remain and have grown 1,000-fold when the war is over. As a conscientious objector, I believe the greatest service I can offer my country is not that of a circumstance-motivated life, but a Christ-motivated life. The greatest disservice I can offer my country is the repudiation of this higher way. I know that Christ's way of redeeming love, though practiced ever so falteringly, individually or collectively, is all for good and gain. I am led by him on this way. I cannot walk otherwise.
I'm a librarian in a large university library, engaged to a man who is in the engineer division in the topographic section. He was drafted last May, and right at the present time I don't know for sure whether he is in Fort Meade or whether he is on his way to some southern camp. He was drafted and I think takes it better than a lot of men who were drafted. But of course I am prejudiced. And although he doesn't want to go, doesn't like to go, he hasn't been too complaining about it. If anybody's done any complaining, I suppose I've done the most. He is going to some southern camp and will probably go overseas. I hope not. It seems to me that they could send some of the men who have enlisted rather than those who were drafted and in a way forced to go. Although I suppose if they sent the ones who, if they only sent those who enlisted, there wouldn't be as many enlistments. I have known few who have wanted to go and who have wanted to go overseas, but not very many. The majority that I've heard from are going because they have to go. They don't like it. And they're not crying about it. They see that it has to be done and they're going, but it's a shame.
Mr. President, my name is Bruce Burchard. I'm a student of electrical engineering at the University of Minnesota. I'm one of those who felt strong non-interventionist sentiments in the days when the conflict was confined to the continent of Europe. And it was not, it seems to me, in ignorance of the interdependence of nations, nor our reliance upon supplies reaching us from the Far East, that I felt these sentiments. It was rather that I felt that with the sacrifice that would have to be made anyhow if conflict were entered into by our nation, that with this sacrifice it would be possible for our nation to become somewhat self-sufficient. The reason I felt that our nation could be self-sufficient is that I have an unalterable faith in the ingenuity of our unhampered and free-thinking American scientists to devise means that would suffice at least for the period in which our nation should have to, shall we say, isolate itself from the world conflict. I felt that the ingenuity would suffice during that period to devise means whereby we could become self-sufficient, at least for the period of sacrifice, for the period of world conflict, and that the small sacrifices that would be made during this period would be much smaller than those sacrifices which would undoubtedly come about as a result of our entering the European conflict.
Dear Mr. President, this is Philip Gelb. I'm a junior at the University of Minnesota, about 21 years old. I've got a 4F rating in the draft, but about a year or so ago or more, I was quite an ardent interventionist. Now I perhaps slipped a little. What I want to know is steps have been taken to win the war. What steps are going to be taken to win the peace? What is there that's going to guarantee us that the boys that do come back, if they do come back, will not come back as charitable hospital patients in veterans' hospitals, or else come back as gangsters like they did after the last war because they aren't afraid to kill? A new gangster era. And who is sacrificing in this war? Is there a terrific sacrifice in a government defense bond which pays 33 1/3% in 10 years? To me, it seems like a pretty good investment. In other words, those that can afford to buy are really making a pretty good profit on this war. And has profiteering been taken out of the war as it was supposed to have been? Congressman Moss, I think it was Moss, here in the state of Minnesota, in speaking to the Navy, said that he would guarantee peace and a new life for 200 years if we had an all-out effort to win this war. How is he going to guarantee this? What steps are going to be taken? In other words, the ones that are doing the sacrificing, how are they going to be repaid?
My name and address first. All right. And my name is Lottie Ryman, 1806 18th Street South, First Avenue South. And I really, with all my heart, you know, I've been thinking things over about the war and how things is going to be, and my real desire is, you know, and that this country will really win the war and defeat the enemy and try to do all we can in power to escape this here great hard times that has come upon us now, and I really looking for our country to win, and we all in hopes that it will win. How is that?
My name is Reed Erickson, and I live in the city of Minneapolis in Minnesota. My boyhood was spent in the state of Utah in a small community. And I feel that this is an opportunity to say something about the present emergency. My great-grandparents came to this country seeking religious freedom, and they found it here. And I feel that this is an opportunity for me at the present time in this emergency, this national crisis, to show my thankfulness and my gratefulness for the privileges and the opportunities that this United States of ours has given me. A chance to live in freedom and happiness and contentment, and has given me an opportunity to live in a way of life that's proven to me to be greater than any other way of life a man could possibly ask for. And so I think that now, in this crisis, is the time for us all to come to the aid of this great United States of ours, and that no sacrifice is too great to make.
Dear Mr. President, my name is Ted Olson, 2012 2.5 Street South. As I have two sons in the Army age, I am very interested in this war, hoping it would be over before my sons would need to be called. But this war we must win, regardless of what our sacrifice may be.
Hello, Mr. President. This is Marguerite Kingbay speaking to you. I've been asked to say a few words concerning our national problem today. However, since my experiences are completely limited to my dramatic career via my education, I feel my observations must be fairly limited. However, speaking from the inner spirit, I hate to see all these young fellows with perfect ideals and philosophies sacrifice these ideals, because it will take visionary men and women such as these to rebuild after this is all over. And I've seen so many of them leave that my heart has been broken more completely than any romance reversal could have been or could have done. But these sacrifices and reversals must be part of Americana today to have Americana tomorrow.
Dear Mr. President, my name is Tor Olsted, and I'm of the age of registering February 16th. And I've got a nephew going to the armed services next Tuesday. And as far as the war situation, as living is going up, but not as enough so I can say I'm bothered anything by it. And I think the Americans are doing a wonderful job. I think if the British would use their manpower accordingly to the stuff that we've been sending them and doing as good a job as the Americans are doing, Hitler would be beat in a short time.
Dear Mr. President, my name is James Williamson. I live at 1401 3rd Street Northeast, Minneapolis, Minnesota. I work at the University of Minnesota as a janitor. The question has been asked me in regards to my opinion of the war situation as it stands in the United States today. I served in the last war in the United States Navy for 2.5 years, the duration of the war. And I feel at the present time that the United States government hasn't closed down tight enough on the general public of the United States and give them enough to think about war. I don't believe that the public is war-minded enough at the present time to really think and save and give, because giving of money isn't all. You must give time and material. And I think the people that are working under government contracts, that is, contracts of the production of armament and things, I think those men are paid too much, and I don't think the men in the armed forces get enough money.
Dear Mr. President, my name is Olaf Olson, from 4408 44th Avenue South, Minneapolis, Minnesota. My opinion of present conditions relative to this war is that The low-paid wage earner is not getting the break that he should be entitled to, considering the fact that cost of living has been going up. The only ones who have been benefiting by it are those in the middle class and upper classes who have been getting increases in wages to adjust the higher cost of living. It seems that nothing has been done for the people who in the lower brackets who have a very difficult time to make a living for themselves and their families.
Dear Mr. President, my name is Mrs. M.R. Schuler. My reactions to the war are those of the average wife and mother, for my husband is a defense worker in Newfoundland, and my only son, an engineer employed at the University of Minnesota, is of draft age. Of course, I have read of Pearl Harbor, the magnificent resistance at Manila and Singapore, and so forth. And yet, it has all seemed more like a dream than something real. Yesterday, however, I was shocked into the realization of what it all means by the news of the death of John Martin, the son of a very dear friend of mine. I believe, like most mothers and wives, in peace. In fact, I believe in it so much that I believe in fighting for it. I have never been in favor of starting a fight, but I do believe in finishing it.
Dear Mr. President, my name is Barbara Hopley, and I live at 319 12th Avenue Southeast. Right at this moment, my boyfriend is taking a physical examination to see if he will be accepted for enlistment in the Army. I hope those stomach aches he has are ulcers. It's not because he wants to go, but because he feels that the sooner he gets in there, the quicker it'll be over. And that's the way I feel about it, too.
Dear Mr. President, my name is Betty Ann McDowell. I live at 319 12th Avenue Southeast, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I think that it's a shame that we who were born during the First World War, brought up during the Depression, have now that our lives are beginning to take shape to face a new world war.
I am not ready for our country to enter a war. I suppose I could be called an isolationist, but I went through school and college during the 20s and early 30s when the emphasis was upon the futility of war, specifically on the failure of the last World War in settling any of the essential problems and particularly in saving the world for democracy. Furthermore, I feel strongly that we as a nation are not prepared for a war, either materially or psychologically. Rather than to work toward the United States intervening, I would much rather see our people and government emphasize building up our armaments, unity among our people, and a way of life really worth fighting for in case it comes to the point that we must fight in defense of our country. It is understandable that we're not prepared in the way of equipment and trained personnel necessary to fight a war, since we've been so recently disillusioned by the results of the last war. Nevertheless, we must now turn our energies to preparing for fighting for freedom to live as we wish, if that becomes necessary. At the same time, I think that we must be willing to make sacrifices as individuals to make life worth living for our underprivileged groups. As a social worker, I am disturbed by the willingness of many people to accept heavy taxation for armaments and to give of their efforts and money to aid the deserving people in foreign countries when they have been antagonistic or at least quite indifferent toward our own underprivileged group. I would like to see a comparable amount of publicity or propaganda or education, the label doesn't matter, given in the effort to make our own nation strong as to helping our friends who may well be fighting our war. Then I want effort placed on uniting our people. I believe the tendency of some administration's leaders has been to cause disunity by emphasizing the existence of classes or groups with opposing interests. I can see no genuine good that can arise from such an emphasis, but it does tend to create disunity. I am for preventing selfishness, dishonesty, and profiteering wherever they exist, but I don't like to see these characteristics attributed to one group or another. If we do get into this war because of aggressive acts on the part of other nations which cannot be endured by our people, then I'm afraid we shall be in for a long war which will bring great suffering to us as well as our enemies. Then, when the war is finally over, I am sure we shall have to work out with all the nations an international police force and a more equitable system of sharing the resources of the world. Again, we shall have to make sacrifices, since we are blessed with more than our share of the valuable natural resources. But if we are united and have built up a way of life in which the general social welfare comes first, we will be ready to take our role in the future and set an example for the other nations.